Hello everyone, my name is Volterra. I am a user of Krita, and today we're going to look at the stabilizer feature. The stabilizer feature has been added to Krita 2.9 in trunk, master, and I'm going to show off how I am going to ink this image using such feature. This is without smoothing. This is weighted smoothing. We already have this. And this is the new stabilizer feature. As you can see, it follows my whole stroke, unlike the weighted smoothing, which has a tendency to stop beforehand. Now, we're first going to start with the lovely bangs of this one. And because of my screen recorder, this is actually harder than it looks. My screen recorder stops or slows down the program even more. It's actually quite smooth. I'm going to try to use a higher smoothing to get nicer lines, but let's hope it works. It doesn't work. I'm just going to have to be very careful. This feature, the slower you move, the more it follows your directions with the stylus. If you move very fast, it will try to smooth out the directions. If you move very slow, it will try to follow them very carefully. I'm not having much luck with this. Okay, so the other bang, first some details. Going to avoid the finer details for now, we're going to do those later. I am using a tablet only workflow here, so I've added my undo buttons onto the toolbar so that I don't need a keyboard to Ctrl Z. And we're going for the ears now. You can configure the toolbar for in settings, configure toolbars, and then Krita and stuff. Now the jawline. The jawline is always why I like having features like stabilizer and smoothing options, because it's very difficult, even freehanding. And now we're speeding up. I'm only going to do the basic forms because we are going to use a smaller brush for the details. This is to make sure that the viewer can make a difference between, or can see the difference between the large shapes and the smaller ones. And it helps a lot in making sure that the picture doesn't become noise because of the large amount of lines. Using the lovely mirroring function, canvas mirroring function to mirror the canvas. I'm a left-handed person, so this feature is very useful for me. It's also useful for right-handed people. Of course, we all have strokes that are just easier to make with our dominant hand. I was very detailed in this picture, painterly like almost, and it's just because it's the easiest way to sketch and I wanted to have a correct sketch. The image is sort of reminiscent of a artist called Alphonse Mucha. Alphonse Mucha was an artist who was mostly active in the late 19th century as a advertisement illustrator, and well, he's mostly been credited with the Art Nouveau style, which is mostly an aesthetic based on making things look like as if they grew into place, which was something that became really popular at the time because the Industrial Revolution made it very easy to have very controlled square shapes. So to show off, so artists and people wanted luxury goods that showed off that these could possibly be made with machinery. Nowadays, of course, we have progressed so far that we can just create these shapes very simply with a machine. So science marches on. I want to do a nice dramatic picture to demonstrate these features. My work is nowhere near as detailed as Mucha's was, though. Okay, it seems that we're going to continue with the color. You need to be very careful that you don't accidentally remove subtlety from your lines with the smoothing features. That hand is pretty awfully drawn. I've tried to fix it later, but in the meantime you have to look at this. There's a couple of mistakes I've made, and it becomes much easier for any artist to try and fix them later, to even see them later, because then you haven't stared yourself blind on the picture, looking at your facets and such. The lantern was, I was actually drawing the lantern, and then I decided to just model it in Blender and use the freestyle option in Blender to render the lines. So it's actually a 3D model. And then I copy paste that render into here and modify it to the look a little so that it will become better looking. I figured that if I can just make use of the perspective that the 3D program brings me, why shouldn't I be? The hair, very dramatic hair. As you can see, I'm undoing my strokes often. And yeah, that's base lines for the lady herself. Making sure that the contiguous lines that are just being cut off by another line, we're going to improve or make sure that they aren't very thin at the end. Some fine lines, final details. And yeah, that's about it. What we're going to do next is we're going to turn on the weighted smoothing instead, because it's a little bit more subtle. You can get nicer lines with it. I'm trying to demo the scalable distance, but I can't really seem to get it right at this in this picture. Okay, we're going to use a small brush. Before I of course realized that it doesn't really look sensible with the other one, so we're using a slightly bigger brush. And then we give up and just use the brush we previously used. Getting those folds in. And going back to the small brush. Stabilizer feature is also very good for tracing over lines that you did before, because you just have so much control over where the line goes. It can sometimes be very, very slow though, as you can see from these speed ups, that it almost is as if I'm just moving towards normal speed from slowing down, instead of speeding up from the normal speed. We'll get back to the embroidery later. First, let's do our face. And speeding up again, because I don't want to show you the whole 1.5 hours I spent on this. Getting the basics down. She looks very Disney. I think it's partially the large eyes and the bangs. Not doing the whole nose, because sometimes that can look very awkward, especially because I'm thinking of coloring this picture. I'm sizing the eyelashes, making sure her eyes look a little bit more hooded so she doesn't look as Disney. She kind of looks like Ariel. Confused look. Details. Fixing those contiguous lines. What else? Details. Let's do the band on the dress now. A lot of times if you see new artists trying out these kind of things, you'll notice that the images just feel wrong, and that's partially because they are not using or are not being careful that their contiguous lines match up correctly and don't taper away. And also because there's just too little detail in the picture to really appreciate what's going on. So it just looks a little boring, and then you're like, eh. You get bored of it very quickly. Making a smaller line on the inside, as if the band had been soon on. And that's it. Almost. I made a mistake, but you won't see it. I won't see it till I open it up this morning, so details. Failing miserably at these folds. Realizing that I want to do something else. I'm going to select this whole area, and then I'm going to use the contiguous select to remove the non-essential parts with intersect and subtract. Then I'm going to realize that I've got something. I'm going to section, and that way I can just draw the lines without interfering with the other parts of the drawing. Yeah, this looks good. Very subtle. Saving. And now we're going to, again, showing off the difference between the different smoothing options. The weighted smoothing is not as great as making a spiral, because it doesn't follow your mouses correctly. Just making up some detail, trying to make up some structure as well. And not being too precise is also a key element here. So it's a metal object, so it's okay if it looks a little battered, as if she dropped it a couple of times before. I mean, the idea of this image was to make it look like she came straight out of a horror movie, that she's going to be eaten by a werewolf in a bit. There we go. Using the lovely rotate canvas features. As you can see, trying to make the lines a little bit more contiguous, and also trying to make sure that the lines representing objects in front of things are a bit thicker than the lines that represent objects further away, which again helps clearing the noise that these kind of images can create very quickly in their line art. I'm going to take care of the fire during coloring, so there's nothing to worry about yet. Alright, that was the girl. Now we're going to do the grass, and we're going to do that on different layers. So we're first going to make her the sketch less obvious and not do anything with the blending modes. And we're going back to our good old friends, the very large inking brush. The more organic the objects, the less precise you need to be. So we are going to speed this up as well. Yeah, making the sketch less visible. If you look closely, you see that there's a completely blue layer in that sketch stack, and that layer is set to screen, which means that all underlying colors, if they're brighter than the light blue color I'm using for this, it gets evened out. And this is really helpful for very complex sketches, because you really don't want to be staring at a too dark sketch, and you want to have a very pleasant color that isn't that doesn't look too much like black, of course, and doesn't hurt your eyes. And traditionally blue was used because old scanners could not pick up on blue, and old photocopiers were specifically assigned that they could not pick up on. And ever since then people realized, like, hey, this is actually a pleasant color to look at, so let's just keep using it. These kind of images can sometimes be a bit of a headache because of the layering of the different crash sheets. Crash blades, I mean. It's looking nice. Sometimes we turn it off by accident with our hands, because I'm using a touchscreen for this. And carefully looking for new plates to draw in a way that's easy for me. We're going to do the cattails in a bit. The cattails are flowers of grass, because grass spreads its pollen by air, as people who have hay fever may know very well. But we're going to do those without smoothing, to make them feel a little bit more organic. Sometimes autosave kicks in, then I have to stop for a bit. I'm changing to weighted smoothing for some reason. I don't recall. Anyhow, final lines. And now we're going to do the cattails. So turning off smoothing, looking closely at one of those things, and just carefully modeling each part. it helps doing these nicely, because it just makes the picture much more interesting. Continuing with that. The stabilizing feature of course helps people who have shaky hands, but it also helps me as a person with very, very stable hands. A lot of inkers, especially professional ones, they have learned how to create very, very stable lines, and they understand their hands very well. So when doing traditional inking, they don't need a stabilizer. So in the case of architecture, things like what are they called? French curves were often used in highly technical drawings. Some people use vectors to do their inking with the line art, but not all vectors are good for working with. I found they interfere a little bit too much, so instead we're just using raster and using the stabilizer feature here. Well, no, yeah, we're not even using stabilizer, so okay. Done with those, and what we're going to do now is we're going to make use of masking. So what we're first going to do is make a new layer. Take some lovely color of red, fill the whole layer, then turn that off, because you shouldn't be looking at colors of red like that too long. It can really damage your eyes. And what we're going to do now is select everything that isn't the grass blades and add bits. My computer has really slowed down with the screen recording software. Krita is much faster at this usually, selecting large parts. Whenever you have a selection active in Krita, then when you create a transparency mask, it will put your selection as the visible part of the transparency mask. So we're first going to grow the selection a little, and then we're not going to forget to invert it. I'm looking for the invert, there's the invert, and right click transparency mask. And if we turn on the layer again, you see that only parts of it are red. Now we are going to remove the parts by, we keep our transparency mask selected and we select the parts that should not be red. We select black. We fight with the dockers. Fill with foreground color, because black is transparent on a transparency mask. We don't forget to grow the selection. There we go. And we use black with the brush to remove bits. I'm seeing I'm forgetting things here. That's and I'm accidentally painting with grey, and I should not be painting with grey, I should be painting with white if I want it visible. There we go. And show the image to go behind it. Use white to fill the whole red layer. There we go. What we're going to do next is we're going to add detail. But first we're going to fight with the dockers some more. Go. Base smoothing, no, weight smoothing, that's what we're going to use. And slightly black, make sure all brushes are visible. And now we're going to add detail. We're just going to add basic grain. Speeding this up because there's more interesting things to do in the world than looking at someone doing grain. Doing this kind of detail, even in the grass that isn't that important to be detailed, is very helpful, because as you can already slowly see, it makes the difference between the grass and the girl's cloth, the girl's dress behind it, a lot more visible. And this, I'm not quite sure what this has to do with. I think it has to do with because you're creating more noise, controls noise in an area, the area becomes more visible as an object. So it's very important to do detailing and to do texture even on a line art meant for coloring. And even if it's not meant for coloring, some toning or some hatching helps a lot to create cohesiveness. Gonna add some more grain, and then realize at the last moment that only the back sides of grass plates show the grain very well. That's okay. So that way you give a sense of depth as well, because you are marking the ones that are faced to the viewer with the backs. And creating more controlled noise. The embroidery further. Should not forget the embroidery. Nice little detail. trying my best to have the fold to form the embroidery. It's kind of tricky, but after a while you understand how it works. Basically try to displace the texture based on how you know the underlying fold is moving. Some extra texture there. There we go. It's very interesting now. And we're going to mask again in a bit again, but first we're going to some details, nails, the like. Fix her mouth. She looks a little dumped now. There's not very many teeth visible at the same time, but there's some. Her eyes look very starry right now because there's just no highlights in them, and I'm just really trying to make the nose look good, but just remove some detail there, and we're going to let the coloring deal with that. And after adding that lovely line indicating the hair, I realized it really shouldn't be there. So now we're going to going to add a few extra lines. And now we're going to mask the girl, so we can put some grass blades behind her. And then we realize we've got some lines. Continuing. And then I realized I forgot more lines. Life is so difficult. But first we're going to remove or make sure that the skirt fits properly and is otherwise hidden by the grass blades. It would be very embarrassing if the backside grass blades showed up underneath the skirt. It's possible, of course. Realizing that we need to invert transparency mask. And we realize we made a mistake. Again. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to filter with red. Okay, now we can see what we're doing wrong. and we see our missing lines. So we try to draw them, and we'll fill a couple of times. And from this point we're just going to speed up again because there's just not much interesting happening. Trying to remove something from the selection with the selection brush. Just about removing things. Growing selections and stuff. Alright, that's that. There's still places I missed, but I'm fixing them later, so after the video is done. Okay, lost grass blades. Drawing pretty quickly because by this point I'm kind of tired of doing this drawing. And I think this is almost it. Yeah, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this demo. I hope you could stand my voice. I am going to black her pupils in a bit to make sure she doesn't look as starry as she does. And I hope you'll, I hope to do more of these in the future. And I hope you'll enjoy, yeah. I hope you learned something from this. So, yeah. Yeah, I think I did a good job. Anyway, Krita has a Kickstarter. I hope you'll donate to it because that means we can implement many more of these kind of features. I think my autograph for last moment. And that's basically it. See ya!